Okay, I want to have a look at how to draw sort of pictures in Inkscape. We're going to try and draw a pencil with a sort of a mark next to it, just to show you how to use the different features of Inkscape. So this is what we're aiming for. We're going to start with the pencil. So this is how I would do it. There's probably better ways to do it, but just to see how I use Inkscape and how it seems intuitive for me, I'm going to start by drawing. Actually, let me maybe leave this open, then I can refer back to it. I'm going to start by drawing this central bar over here and this little first part, and then we'll add the other sides to it. So first I go for a red rectangle like such. So I'm going to check here. Remember, with this circle you can round off rectangles or make them sharp, so I want it to be sharp in the corners and perhaps a little bit longer over here. What I always do when I'm drawing is under fill and stroke, I always turn the opacity down to about 50 or so, just so I can see what's going on while I'm drawing with overlapping, etc., etc. So that's cool for the beginning part. And now I want the triangle, this little triangle which comes in out over here. So let's go ahead and do that. Here we're going to use the create styles and polygons function. I want to create a polygon and I just want 3 corners. So that's obviously a triangle. So if I hold control, then I can get it to snap to appropriate angles, and that's the angle that I want. So I'm going to try and fix the right length, horizontal length, about that, from there to there. And then if I move this, well, let's use the align and distribute. So I select, open up this tab. I'm going to be working with first selected, so I want it to align relative to the rectangle, and I hold shift and I want this and slave and master. So the master is the yellow one which I selected first, and I want to move whatever's on the left like that, and I want the centers to be aligned, which is perfect. I'm going to change this color to something yellow, and I'm going to get rid of the stroke. I'm going to work without strokes. Let's check that. So you can see strokes get complicated because now you can see they actually weren't aligned. They were, the two strokes were overlapping one another, and then it gets a bit confusing. So it's easiest, I reckon, to just work without strokes. So let's realign these, make sure it's all right. And then I'm going to edit nodes. I want to edit all the nodes. Remember the difference between changing an object's properties like that or editing the nodes, where you fundamentally edit the different lines in the drawing. So if I click here, I want to bring this node. Oh, the problem with this is it's currently fixed as an object. Sorry, I forgot about that. And I can't then edit the nodes. So if I go path and I say object to path, I then convert it to a set of lines. And now you can see that each line ends and starts with a node, which I can now edit. So I then drag this. I'm going to help myself by turning the snap function on. I'm going to let it snap to corners and centers. This will help me just to move with ease. So you can see there, cusp node to corner. Now I know that it's perfectly on the corner. Do the same with the bottom, and we're good. Okay, that looks about right for this triangle. And now I'm going to do the little top graphite part just to get it out of the way. So I think the easiest way to do this is probably just to click on here and then press Control D to duplicate it. You can see it gets darker because now there are 2 shapes on top of each other. Control Z brings it back. And now if I, so there's a variety of ways to do this. I'm going to change this to gray, and we obviously want these 2 nodes. So I hold shift there to select the 2. We want them about here. So I'm just going to use the arrow keys and I'm going to bump them along up to where I want that line to be. So let's say about there. And then there's various ways to do this. I could hold control and try drag it down, and there you can see cusp node to path. That would work. So that's worked well. There are other options. We could have, for example, I'm just going to duplicate this whole thing and drag it down so I can work on another copy. If, for example, we hadn't done this part yet, we could duplicate this once and change it to gray, and then we could use another another object as sort of a cutting plane. So we draw this cutting plane up to about where we want the graphite to be, like that, for example. We make sure that this is on the top. So change its color. We make sure it's up on the top, and then we select it and the thing we want to trim, and we would like everything that is not common between the bottom element. So it's always the top element cutting and the bottom element, the parts are remaining or getting cut off. So here we want the difference between the two, because we want the part that sticks out that's different to what is covered by our cutting plane. So we say path difference, and you can see we left there with a little nib, which is exactly the same basically as the other method. So you can choose whatever suits you. Now we want to put in, you can see here we've got sort of a 3D look to the pencil to show that it's round. So there's also many ways to do this. I'm going to start by duplicating my rectangle, and then I'm going to drag it up and snap it to the corner over here. Then obviously I want this to be a little bit thinner to give that 3D effect, so I'm going to just bring it down to a place where I'm happy. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to say path, object to path, because I want to be able to access the different nodes on this rectangle. I'm going to click on the node editor, and I'm going to select the two outside nodes, and I'm just going to bump them forward using the left key to about there, which is great. And then I want this to be duplicated on the bottom, so I'm going to Control D to make another copy of it. You can see there it is, but I actually want this to be flipped the other way around. So if I look up here, I've got a flip in the horizontal, flip in the vertical plane, or you flip them vertically across the horizontal plane. So I flip it, and then I get the mirror image basically of that, which is perfect, and I put that there. I'm just going to change, I want to put darks on top and lights on the bottom. I'm just going to change them quite drastically so I can see the differences. For now, I think the easiest to be will be to use the Bezier pen and actually draw in this triangle. So I click on Bezier curve, and I've got my snap on, so it's easy to snap to the different nodes. And you can see there that that is relatively easy. And I right click to finish, and then I say I want no stroke, and I'd like to fill it with sort of a darker yellow. And the opacity needs to come down just a bit for me. You lose the opacity because I didn't duplicate any pictures here. Because I drew a line and I directly filled it using the fill function. The opacity obviously just gets set to 100. And then I also want my little graphite tip over here, and I want this line to line up with this line. So here I'm going to use the trim function that I showed you earlier. So I'm going to duplicate this once, and I'm going to change it to a dark color. And then I'm going to duplicate it again, and this is going to now serve as my cutting plane. Let's make it something completely different, green for example. And now if I just click on this and I shift it left, well, basically what I want to do is align the corner of this with the edge of the graphite pen. So what I'm doing is I'm moving this line equivalently down here so that I cut it parallel for my little graphite nib. And now if I select, I want this to be on top because this is my cutting plane, and what's going to get cut is this piece of darker graphite. So I want to select these two, and now you can see I actually want the part where these two shapes intersect. So the common part between these two triangles, which is this little piece down here, and I want that to be thrown away and this to be thrown away. And because I'm cutting using the green because it's on top, and I'm keeping the dark color, the dark will stay instead of a green triangle over there. So I say path, intersection, and I get there my little nib. Then I could, I guess, duplicate these two and flip them, and I can bring them down here to get the other half of my pencil. So because it's obviously common across both sides. Let's, for a little bit of complexity, let's add a even further. It's getting quite fat, so I'm just going to compress it vertically. I want to add, just to give it a bit more, even another thinner little outside to make another panel. So I do exactly as I did before. So there you have it. I've made an even more sort of rounded pencil graphically. And now it looks a little bit fat, so I'm going to compress it even more. And perhaps I'd like to elongate just the base a bit, so I'm going to edit the nodes. I'm going to hold all of these and I'm going to edit all these back nodes. I didn't convert the original rectangle to a path, so I'm going to do that. And now I should be able to access all the nodes from these different shapes. The rectangle still didn't convert properly, but that's no problem. I can just drag it out to snap to the path. Okay, then I'm happy with my pencil. So before I group everything, let's sort out the coloring. So I'm going to highlight everything and I'm going to bring the opacity up to 100, get the proper colors. And then down here in my color pane, I'm actually just going to step through, making it progressively lighter as I go along, just to give it a bit of flair. That seems about fine. It's quite hard to do this, to get it to actually look correct and different. You can see here I forgot to do it earlier, and it's basically white. So there we have our pencil, and I'm going to highlight everything and group it. And now it's one image, and if I click on it again, then I get to rotate it, which is cool. Click again, and I Control Shift just to shrink it and keep its aspect. So I'm happy with that. Now I want to do a nice little curvy stroke over here as if my pencil drew it. So I go on the Bezier pen, and you can see here you can draw a shape. I'm going to change from drawing with no shape to just a line. I'm going to make it an ellipse. Gives it a nice flair. It looks like sort of a calligraphy pen. And then I'm just going to click on one side, and I don't want it to snap, so I'm going to turn the snap function off just before the pen and right click to end. And yeah, here I'm going to click on the edit paths by nodes, and basically I'm just going to click on the line and pull it upwards a little bit, and then click on the other side and pull it downwards a little bit just to give it a bit of curve. It's the same as if you were to edit. If you check here, you make these nodes curves. They become curves, and then they're symmetric with, as if this line was to carry on. So if you were to make this very steep, you can see that if the line were to carry on, the curve would have to dip like that so that it could continue. So if you play with this bar, and then if you bring it all the way, there's no continuation, and the longer you make it, the more of an effect it plays in the curve. Basically, it's hard to teach this. You kind of just get used to it by playing around a little bit, but it can both make it greatly intricate and greatly complicated to work with nodes and these curve bars. But let's assume we're happy with that. You can see how I can move it like that. And the last thing I'm going to do is just get a little bit of a gradient so it looks like it's fading as we move to where the pencil is. And to do that, I choose to fill with a linear gradient, and you can see my gradient's currently the wrong way. So if I press G on the keyboard, I get the gradient editing tool. So this is where the gradient where you have the lightest, and that's where you have the darkest. So it's actually the wrong way around currently. So I'm just going to do this. We might want to have a little bit more to it, so maybe you can drag it around. Maybe you want something like that. Looks about right. And there you have it. So there's our pencil and curvy pen. So you see how we use the trim function and a little bit of flair in terms of getting the 3D effect going. There are various opportunities and possibilities of what you can do with Inkscape. I hope that helps you just a little bit.